So some of you who have been around for a while may remember a YouTuber by the name of ShockofGod, or you may know him better as that guy who rants while riding a motorcycle. We've done one response to him, though it got split up into 2 videos because there was a whole lot of crazy. But today we'll be doing yet another one, and probably just leaving it in 1 video. So let's see what we can do here. 6 stupid atheist beliefs that are stupid and irrational. Sounds like a totally not unhinged title. He sounds totally sane writing that title. Alright, let's hear it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my world. This is California on a 116-degree Fahrenheit day. This is the traffic. And today, I am so dedicated to proving the fact that atheism is madness that I'm out here on a 116-degree Fahrenheit day to do just that. So,
oh God.
I have here in my formally Bible page turning fingers 6 stupid things that atheists always say. We're going to go through them.
So did this man, he was just like riding his motorcycle, then pulled over under a bridge and said, you know what, it's time to preach, and then pulled out a piece of paper, and is he just going to sit here and read off this piece of paper under this bridge? Because that would be really fucking funny. Let's see.
Let's get going.
Oh no, he is going to start. Wait, hold up.
The Kawasaki Z1000, which is a product of intelligent design, folks. If I were to ask you,
yes,
do you think this motorcycle just popped into?
Oh my God, are we already going back to this shit? Do you think this motorcycle just popped into existence? Oh my God, what did he do with that piece of paper? Was it just like sitting on his lap? That's what it looked like to me.
We're gonna go through them. Let's get going.
Oh, so he's just got it sitting there. Oh God, it would be so fucking funny if he got like halfway through and then the piece of paper just goes flying and he just starts floundering. That would be really fucking funny.
We are on the Kawasaki Z1000, which is a product of intelligent design, folks. If I were to ask you, do you think this motorcycle just popped into existence uncaused for no purpose? Would you say that's true? Or what if I told you?
No, probably not. I'd say, no, that's a motorcycle. That's something that is made by people for a purpose because, you know, there's no biological or natural process that could have created it.
Visor closed. That this was a product of intelligent design. You know, obviously it has the motor, it has the throttle, it has the speedometer, has coolant so it doesn't overheat, fuel injection, and what we're doing right now is lane splitting, by the way. And what if I asked you, well, what?
I don't know, maybe I'm not big on the whole motorcycle thing. What is lane splitting? Is he just like driving between 2 different lanes? Riding a bicycle, motorcycle, or any other 2-wheeled vehicle between rows of slow-moving traffic driving in the same direction. Is that... can you do that? That sounds like some dumb shit. Hold up. Okay, California is currently the only state that allows motorcycle lane splitting. I don't know where this man's at, but you go for it, bud. You go right ahead.
What about you, the viewer of this video? Do you believe you are the product of intelligent design?
No, I don't think so. I think it's pretty reasonable, based on what we know, to be able to say, here are the processes, the natural processes, with no sort of intelligence behind them, that eventually ended up leading to life, which then eventually ended up evolving over time due to, again, natural processes that require no intelligence, to eventually become humans, to eventually become me. So, yeah, I'd say no, we are not a product of intelligent design, or at least especially not, we especially don't have to be. We are not necessarily a product of intelligent design, and if we were a product of intelligent design, it would be a very poor designer, because we have a lot of things that are just wrong in our design, like the way that we process light, how we have a blind spot in our eye because of, is it the retina? there's a part of the eye that blocks where we have to, like, where we take in the information from the photoreceptors. So that we just have a blind spot in our eye because our eye is basically wired backwards. Like, yeah, no, if we were intelligently designed, the intelligence was not very sophisticated, to say the least.
If you've already committed that...
Yeah, no, this guy, I would be so fucking pissed if this guy just, like, rode between me on the highway. Fuck this. Yeah, no, this is scary as shit. I would be so... I would not be okay with this shit.
Hold on, this dude wants to get over here. You've already committed to the fact that this motorcycle is a product of intelligent design. You must commit to the fact that you, the viewer, are...
I love that he just, like, points to the GoPro. He's like, and you are a product of intelligent design. You right there. Yeah, no, that's just nonsense. There's a difference between a motorcycle, which is built of completely non-organic materials, and a person who is a product of natural processes that have eventually, over time, formed living things. Like, there is no comparison here.
Are a product of intelligent design. Oh, by the way, it tells us to get off here. Because you, the viewer, are well over 1 million times more complex than this motorcycle.
I'm not quite sure where exactly he's pulling that statistic out of, but yeah, I'd say we're probably 1 million times more complex than a motorcycle. That's fair. That's probably why humans have yet to be able to figure out how to create a human, whereas they can create a motorcycle. Because it's a whole lot more complex to create a human, because it takes natural processes that we don't fully understand in many cases. So yeah, that does not surprise me at all.
Do you know that you, the viewer, have trace elements from the Earth within your body?
Yeah, no shit.
You know this motorcycle also has trace elements.
No, we have like very limited trace, like, earth elements in us. Like, we have iron in our body, we have in very small amounts. The motorcycle that you are riding on is completely inorganic. Like, everything in there is like metal and plastic and this sort of stuff that is not organic material, which means there is no way for it to have formed itself.
Within itself from the Earth, within its body. But there's one thing that you have among many things that you have that this motorcycle doesn't have. You have a free will.
Probably not. No, I'd say the free will thing is interesting. I don't really necessarily know where I fall on free will. I think most likely we probably don't have free will, to, like, especially to the extent that a lot of religious people think that we do. I think a lot of what we do is based on sort of our genetics and the way that we I guess just like natural processes in our brain, because I know that there are instances, pretty significant instances of scientists being able to detect what somebody's going to do before they even know what they're going to do based on what goes on in their brain. So yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where, like, it's kind of like how you have to assume that you have, that you exist in order to be able to process the world around you. Like, you have to assume, in order to process the world around you, that at least you and your perception exists and is valid in that way. It's kind of like that, where, like, in order to go about your daily life, you kind of just have to live with the assumption that, like, you are able to make choices, because that's kind of just how we experience the world. I feel like it kind of fits in that sort of vein. I don't really think it matters that much whether we have actual free will, especially in the way that a lot of religious people like to assert that we do. I don't think it's really that important. Yeah, I don't really think it matters that much, and I'm curious where he goes with it.
And you have a mind where you can reason.
Okay.
And come to things that are logical. So
yeah, I mean, that's something that brains can do. Brains, which are organic things that are formed over time, over evolutionary processes. So yeah, I would say that it would make sense that that is not something that the motorcycle would be able to do.
Hold on. So what we're going to do is try...
This guy just seems like such a piece of shit, just like weaving in and out of cars. Like maybe he is in California and he's allowed to do this. Maybe this is just something that people on motorcycles do, but I've never seen somebody on a motorcycle do this, and if they did, it would piss me the fuck off because they are putting other people in danger. Like, I don't know, I don't want you getting that close to my car if I don't like know that you are totally competent on that motorcycle. It just seems like there's no good reason that people should be allowed to do that, which is probably why you can only do it in California.
Unbrainwash the atheists. I have been successful in unbrainwashing many atheists.
Oh, I'm sure that you have been very successful.
Every single month, because I myself, folks, used to be a snot-nosed, pimple-faced, stupid atheist.
I, too, used to be a snot-nosed, pimple-faced, what was that, stupid? Is that what he said?
Snot-nosed, pimple-faced, stupid
atheist. And now you're a snot-nosed, pimple-faced, stupid theist. I mean, it's amazing how things change.
That's right, folks. But then I grew up,
and
I took off the Sears or JCPenney tough skin jeans.
What?
And I put on the good old American Levi's. Of course.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Yeah, he took off the old jeans and he put on the Made in America Levi's, and now he sees the truth.
Today we have shorts on because 116 degree Fahrenheit. But you know what? Hell,
Jesus Christ.
Is going
Maybe he is in California. I know it's pretty hot over there.
to be a lot more
at least right now.
Promiscuous. So,
you know, I live in Tennessee, and it doesn't get super hot here. Like, if it's over 90 degrees, it's fucking hot here. Like, that's what we would consider to be real hot. Like, I think only a few times in my life I've seen it get over 100 degrees. You know, I can't do heat. I can do cold all day long. Heat, can't do it. If I was in 110 degree heat, holy shit, I would die.
let's start off with number one of 6 things. Don't you find it a coincidence that there's 6 things?
Probably not really a coincidence, because you wanted to make this connection, so you made 6 things that you now want to connect to the devil's number. So
the number of the beast. 6 crazy things.
Wow, that, you know, it's amazing. I for a second I thought maybe this came upon by natural processes, this number of 6, and then I realized, oh no, it was unintelligently come to by this man.
That atheists say. Let's start off with number 1.
Oh my God, this
where
man
the
was
atheists
just
will
a
say
piece
that
of notebook
Christians have
paper.
no evidence for the existence of God. But you know
True.
what? As I tap my finger
Oh my God,
to the GoPro,
why?
which is seated on my chin.
On your chin? What?
Ever so securely, we hope.
My God, every time he does that, like the lighting just like glares because it has to readjust.
Watch many debates, and every debate I watch between atheists and Christians, it is the Christians. They are the Christians that bring the evidence, and the atheists bring nothing.
Interesting, because when I was first coming out of religion, when I was first starting to question it, I watched a lot of debates, because what I was hoping for was that there would be somebody, anybody on the Christian side who could give me any sort of reason to believe in this, because I wanted to, because this was what I was raised in, this is what I believed, this was my whole identity, was in this sort of Christian faith. And so I was hoping, I was watching intently, hoping that somebody would give me something that made any sort of sense. And in every single debate I watched, they gave me nothing. Every single point that they tried to raise was fallacious in some way, and was generally pretty quickly pointed out as being so. And yeah, that is ultimately what ended up moving me over and making me say, yeah, no, this is bullshit, because I kept looking and never found anything. I watched a whole lot of debates.
For example, right below this video, I'm going to put a debate where Pastor Cliff...
Oh God, Cliff. Ah, Cliff. I remember Cliff. He mentions him in the other one.
provides evidence for his side of the argument, Christianity, but
I don't remember. I think he mentioned his evidence for Christianity in the last video we did, but I can't remember what exactly that is. So was that actually... No, I think that was the whole video. The last video was his evidence for God, which we went over, and it was all bullshit. So that's funny. Yeah, no, I don't remember a whole lot of it because it's been a while, but maybe he'll go over some of it again here.
The other guy, the atheist, of course, now Matt Dillahunty is saying that God can exist. The Christian God can exist. He's on record.
I would be pretty surprised if Matt Dillahunty said that the Christian God could exist. I've not heard him say that. If that was the case, then again, I don't really listen much to Matt Dillahunty. But even if that was the case, that Matt Dillahunty had said that, I maintain that Matt Dillahunty would be wrong in that, because the Christian God, as described in the Bible, cannot exist. It is a being that is contradictory in and of itself. It cannot exist.
Saying that, so he's an agnostic now. So we're making progress with Matt.
That'll be the day when Matt Dillahunty says, you know what, guys? I've seen the light. I used to be a snot-nosed, pimple-faced, stupid atheist, but now I've seen the way.
If Matt was here, I'd slap his little bald head on top in love and kindness.
I'd slap his little bald head in love and kindness.
Because I'd be like, remember that Benny Hill, the old show Benny Hill, where he'd slap the old man's top of his head? I would do that to Matt Dillahunty.
You sound pretty old too, my guy. I don't know how old you are, but you sound pretty old.
If he was here now, in love, because he's finally admitted that the Christian God can exist.
God, that's so fucking condescending. He'd be like, "Aw, look at you. You got there. Aw, what a good little atheist. You figured it out. I'm so proud."
The old man's top of his head. I would do that to Matt Dillahunty if he was here now, in love, because he's finally admitted that the Christian God can exist. You know, it's a weird sort of atheism.
Atheism.
That admits that. They should call it atheism.
God, this is just like the Trump thing. Like, he says atheism, and then he says, and then he moves on, says what he meant to say, and then he, instead of saying, "Oh, I didn't mean to say atheism," he doubles down and says, "That's a good idea." He said, like when Trump said, I said maybe there should be a space force. There should be a new force, a space force. And I wasn't really serious, but then I sat back and I said, you know what? That's really a good idea. We should do that. It's the same bullshit where, like, you say something dumb and then you just double down on it.
Because atheism used to be the claim God doesn't exist.
Oh, God. I've talked about this in the past. I don't really care at this point. I call myself an atheist. I personally would say that I am pretty positive that at least any sort of God that has been, like, described in any holy book absolutely does not exist. And I would be likely to say that no God does exist. Like, definitively, I would say that no God exists. At least no God in any way that has been described. So yeah, that would be the way I fit into it. Then again, I don't think there's any... Personally, I don't really think there's any meaningful distinction between atheism and agnosticism. I don't really think there's any major difference there. I think a lot of it is semantics, and I don't really care at this point. If you want to call yourself an agnostic, that's fine. I'm basically just going to assume that you are an atheist. That's basically just the way I see it. I don't really care.
Now, according to Matt Dillahunty, atheism is the claim the Christian God can exist. So
again, I haven't heard this clip, but it would surprise me.
So we're making inroads, folks. This is just funny. Hold on, we do want to make it through this light.
Oh,
nice.
God.
Motorcycle rider up here. We're going to get over here. No, are you going over all lanes or just a few? Thank you for not killing me.
Maybe if you weren't trying to speed through traffic lights.
Here to see a debate where Matt Dillahunty loses and admits...
I'm not going to watch a whole debate with Matt Dillahunty. I really don't care that much. Nor do I really think that even if Matt Dillahunty were to say something dumb and actually lose, which I still pretty much doubt, it would not matter, because it's not a matter of, like a lot of religious people, where if where what people say who believe what you do kind of becomes like the truth, like there is an objective truth. It's just not the case, like as far as these sort of things go. So yeah, no, I don't really care.
That God can exist, but when asked to provide evidence for his side of the argument, evidence that would show that atheism is true, that God doesn't exist, why is the motorcycle guy
Which is a ridiculous question to ask. Because which is a ridiculous question to ask because you don't need to provide evidence that God doesn't exist, because that's not the extraordinary claim. The baseline assumption should be that there's no supernatural being that is controlling things. That should be the baseline intuitive sort of reality. But the problem is that that is not normally the case in our society, because so many people are religious that the baseline is almost seen as there is a God, and it seems strange to think that there's not, when the extraordinary claim is actually the idea that there is some sort of huge supernatural being that is powerful and controlling everything.
He said he doesn't have any evidence. So
I mean, as far as individual gods, like specific gods, you can absolutely give evidence as to why they specifically don't exist. As to, like, the existence of a god, period, it would be pretty dumb to ask for evidence of that.
Folks, this is why I left atheism. If you look at both sides, Christianity has evidence. Atheism is a view of which...
God, it still makes me so uncomfortable the way he just, like, rants for 20 minutes on a motorcycle while, like, driving and weaving around people. I hate it.
There is no evidence. Extremely hot. Oh my gosh. My legs are, like, on fire. So let's see what this guy's on. I think he's on a 300.
I don't fucking care.
How you doing, brother? It's definitely a 300, but it's a R3. Yeah, I knew it. So, it is so hot, I'm telling you. Anyways, I even have a cooling vest. I'm going to go.
I feel like this guy, he's stalling here because he doesn't want to, like, talk about this shit next to another person, because even he knows it sounds really fucking dumb.
We've got some time to travel here. See you later, number 46. You know what number 46 is? The man, the legend, MotoGP racer, the doctor.
I know nothing about motorcycles,
it is
and
the
I don't
atheists
care.
that believe in a view of which there is no evidence. Look right below here. Go.
You don't need evidence, because that should just be the baseline. Like, the assertion that something supernatural exists in and of itself is an extraordinary claim that requires some sort of evidence. The rejection of that, when there is no evidence being provided, which, as we've gone through, if I'm remembering correctly, we've said plenty of times in the last video that this guy did that we responded to, and in our whole series we did on evidence for God, there just isn't any. At least none that is in any way compelling. So the baseline should just be, yeah, there's probably no God, which is the atheistic perspective.
Go to my blog, my debate blog, where you can see and hear many debates, also me in debate.
Oh, God.
As we show atheism and kindness and love, that atheism is madness. But you'll see Matt Dillahunty losing a debate as he admits he has no evidence that would finally at last prove that atheism is accurate and correct. So, folks, one of the mistakes atheists make is talking about evidence, my atheist friends.
One of the problems, or one of the mistakes Christians make, is by asserting that atheism needs to have evidence when it is just a negative claim. It is not it's like not an actual positive claim that you are trying to give evidence for. It is just the rejection of somebody else's poorly substantiated positive claim. So yeah, it's fucking dumb that people, like, ask you, or that is such a common thing, like, how do you know that that's true? What is your evidence for that? And there's just no reason. There's no, like, reasonable, like, reason that anybody would actually ask that if they have any idea what they're talking about.
You sure as hell better not ask for evidence, because you guys lack evidence. In fact, all the Christian has to do in debate to win, if the Christian brings up the eyewitness accounts of Jesus Christ, the cosmological argument.
Eyewitness accounts of Jesus Christ don't necessarily mean anything. They could have been hallucinations. They could have just been a narrative that people came up with and decided to go with. That wouldn't really surprise me based on the way that we see a lot of conservatives do with things nowadays, where they'll get one idea and then suddenly all of them will be talking about it regardless of whether it's true or not, and they'll all use the same talking points. I would not be surprised if it was something like that. The cosmological argument we just talked about is bullshit.
anything that begins to exist must have a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore it has a cause. The evidence, and the cause, by the way, can't be material. It has to be spiritual.
Everything that it begins to exist must have a cause. The universe began to exist, so it must have a cause. And by the way, it has to be a spiritual cause. It can't be material cause, despite the fact that everything else that exists has a material cause. So, I mean, just ignore it. Ignore the fact that we're making a special argument for just the universe. Ignore that. That doesn't matter. The important part is that God exists because I say he does.
Because all matter, space, time, energy came into existence. So, just those two arguments beat zero arguments. And
no, because neither of them have any sort of merit.
The atheists never have any arguments. Now, folks, I'm doing this video in September in 116 degree Fahrenheit weather.
Jesus, fuck, that's
which
hot.
Means we have October, November, December. This will make it now not 10 years, 11 years that the atheists have failed to answer my challenge, the Shock of God challenge. It rolls off your lips like a fine wine or an ice cold Coca-Cola or Pepsi. What proof and evidence can you provide as a sweet, cuddly, huggable, lovable atheist that would finally at last prove that atheism is accurate and correct? You know, Matt Dillahunty failed that. Aaron Ra failed that. You know,
Aaron.
He's an atheist, but he dresses up like a Hasidic Jew.
The fuck?
I kid you not. People look at him like, what's this Jew doing bashing God? He's got like the hat and everything.
I mean, I've never considered Aaron Ra's get up to be Jewish. If that's the case, okay. But a lot of Jews are actually agnostic or atheistic as well. A lot of them are culturally Jewish. They're not actually like religiously Jewish. But yeah, again, it doesn't matter because your challenge has no basis in like why it needs to be answered in the first place. And like, again, if you were to give me specific gods, like your specific God, your God that you believe in, the omnipotent, omniscient God, omnibenevolent God, and yet there's evil, that already is a contradiction that disproves the idea that your God could even exist. So like specific gods, yes, you can absolutely give evidence as to why they don't exist, but the concept of a God in general, without any sort of like qualifying statements, is like there's no reason to even argue against it because it doesn't matter.
Thunderfoot. Richard Dawkins has admitted that God can exist. Richard Dawkins says he has no evidence against the existence of God. You know,
yeah, a God could exist. It's just not the one that you're talking about, nor does it have the properties that you assert that it does.
We have him on record saying that.
Okay.
Richard Dawkins is terrified to debate the #1 debater, Christian debater in the world, Dr. William Lane Craig. And
oh God, William Lane Craig, the best debater. Trust me, I watched plenty of his debates when I was coming out of religion. He's not always cracked up debate.
A one-on-one debate. He'll say, I'll go in a group debate, but I don't want to debate one-on-one. And you'll never be able to find a debate where Richard Dawkins has debated Dr. William Lane Craig in a one-on-one debate. So one of the dumb things that atheists say is when they accuse Christians of having no evidence, when there's tons of evidence.
God, he's still talking about this first point.
Christianity, but there's zero for atheism.
He's almost 10 minutes into this.
You have to go where the preponderance of the evidence is. Are we still recording, folks? Let's see here. You have to go where the preponderance of the evidence is, and atheism lacks evidence. Christianity has evidence. The existence of God has evidence.
No, it does not.
Therefore, you have to go against atheism. DNA, empirical proof of design, the cosmological argument, which shows that it had to be something immaterial, even spiritual, that created the universe. We talked about DNA being empirical proof of design, the complex.
Oh God, this is just the same arguments that we've already been over in our previous videos that we've done about this, and we've shown how all of them are wrong. None of them actually prove anything. We've been over every single one of these.
Of the cell. We talked about the eyewitness accounts of Jesus Christ's resurrection. They believed it so much they were willing to die for.
Yeah, the idea that somebody is willing to die for something because they believe it so much has no bearing on whether it's actually true. You can convince yourself so purely of anything that you're willing to die for it. That doesn't make it true.
The fact that they saw him alive. We talked about the empty tomb. I can go on and on and on. The teleological argument, which addresses.
Oh God, the teleological argument.
Tuning of the universe. One of the funny things atheists say is they'll say, well, you believe in a talking snake. But the atheists themselves admit that they're just evolved animals that talk.
I mean, I don't think any atheist is gonna, like, get hung up on you believe in a talking snake. But even if they did, like, yeah, there's never been any evidence of a snake that talks, mostly because snakes lack the, the biological components to be able to speak, like most animals do. Like, they cannot produce the sounds that humans do in order to speak our languages. So that's already, yeah, it's kind of fucking dumb to believe that a snake was talking. But what did he say here?
A talking snake. But the atheists themselves admit that they're just evolved animals that talk.
Right. We're just evolved pond scum, right? Yeah, no, obviously, yeah, if you evolve in a way that allows you to, that forms vocal cords in a way that you can actually voice the things that you need in order to have a language, then yeah, you can speak, which is what has happened, because we were a social species that ended up evolving the means to have more complex speech. That's what happened.
So the atheist is committed to believing in talking animals. And if you've ever wanted to see an ass talk, trust me, you can see an ass talk if you watch these atheists in debate. One of the other stupid things that atheists do is they bash God, but they never bash Satan.
I mean, I don't believe either of them exists, so I don't give a fuck. Why would I care about Satan if I don't believe that any of it exists?
I think this proves whose side they're on. You notice that?
You're right. Yeah, no, my atheism is actually a front. I am actually a deep cover agent from Satan himself.
You will find 0 videos here on YouTube, my fellow viewer of this video, bashing Satan. But you will find thousands. You'll never get finished counting.
That's because, as funny as it is, in a lot of the stories in the Bible that involve God and Satan, God is worse. Like, God does worse things. Like the idea that, like in Job, when Satan's like, "Hey, I wanna fuck with this guy," and God's like, "Do it, you won't." And then he does, and God's like, "Keep doing it. Make his life shit. Make him hate everything. See if you can make him give up his belief in me. Let's see how far we can push this guy." Like, if you are an omnipotent being and you apparently care about everybody, and you could say, "No, Satan, don't do that," and Satan wouldn't, then yeah, you're at fault for that shit. The fact that you would create a fruit knowing that Adam and Eve were going to eat it, because you apparently know everything in advance, knowing that they're going to eat it, and you create it anyway just so you can punish them, yeah, that's on you. God in the Bible is almost in every single case, at least that I can think of off the top of my head, portrayed as being worse than Satan.
The videos that are bashing God by atheists. Why are atheists so angry with God, but they're not angry with Satan? It could be because homosexuality is a sin, and homosexuality is running rampant in the limp-wristed atheist community. So that's the second thing that atheists do, which is stupid.
Stupid.
They bash God, but never Satan. One of the things atheists do is they'll say because they reject evidence for God's existence, therefore God doesn't exist. But this is just a false, irrational argument. For example, I have absolutely no evidence, I don't know this person in the vehicle in front of me, I have no evidence that they have a cell phone in their car, the SUV thing here. So it would be irrational for me to say, therefore the cell phone doesn't exist.
Well, no, that is not the case, because here's the thing. It can be generally intuited based on the way that we live our lives that, yeah, that person in that car probably has a cell phone in their car because we witnessed that that is how things are. The idea that that then means that you can assert that a supernatural being that nobody has ever seen exists because of based on that same argument is laughable. It's really fucking stupid.
He could very well have a cell phone. It is irrational to say that this person in front of me, because I don't see the evidence of the cell phone, therefore there's no cell phone.
But we know cell phones exist, and we know that most people have them. There is no good reason to believe that anything supernatural exists, let alone an omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient God. Like, there's no good reason to believe that, so you need to provide a good reason to believe that, or the reasonable thing to do would be to say, nah, probably not.
So, I asked you a question. Let's say we looked in the car and there is a cell phone. Was the cell phone existing even when we were denying the existence of the cell phone? Of course.
The argument is not that God doesn't exist because we don't believe in him. It's because we don't. The argument is that we don't believe in him because there's no good reason to believe that he exists. That's the argument. It's not that God doesn't exist because we don't believe in him.
Of course it was. Same thing with God. Because someone denies the existence of God and rejects evidence, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. In other words,
okay, and?
Absence of evidence of the cell phone that this person has, or may not have, or has, is not then evidence that he doesn't have one.
True, but that only applies to things that we know exist and we have reason to believe exist. If we have no good reason to believe that a supernatural being exists, something that exists outside of our reality, which is what most people end up falling back on and claiming, that they exist outside of our reality, so there's no way we can measure it. If it exists outside of our reality, then it doesn't exist within our reality. There's no good reason to believe that it exists, so there's no good reason to believe it, which is why we don't.
He may, or she may, well indeed, have one. So absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
No.
What the atheists have to do, and this is why I'm saying they have an evidence problem, they have to show evidence that God does not exist. Now, the atheist will mistakenly say, well, I cannot show evidence that God cannot exist. You can't disprove a negative, but you can do this all the time. I can show evidence that we've never had a female president of the United States. I could show evidence we've never had a female vice president of the United States. I'm disproving a negative. All you have to do, atheists, can I educate you?
Oh, God.
As you guys would say, can I educate you guys? Let me educate you guys. All you got to do to disprove something is show that it's self-contradictory. But the problem is...
I mean, none of the things that you just listed were self-contradictory. But you also say that God can do anything, and then things that are self-contradictory then disprove that your God can do anything. Your God cannot create a square circle. But if he can do anything, then why can't he create a square circle? Because it can't exist.
Atheists have been trying for centuries to disprove the existence of the Christian God, and
the Christian God, super easy to disprove.
This year,
any number
when
of
it
ways.
Ends, that will mean 11 years that the atheists have failed to answer the Shock of God challenge.
Okay, so apparently the Shock of God challenge is just about the Christian God. That makes it much easier.
With proof and evidence, they have failed to provide proof and evidence that atheism...
Okay, here's the problem with all of these challenges, is they can claim forever, in perpetuity, that nobody has ever been able to satisfy their challenge, because they make up the challenge and they decide when it has been met. And they're never willing to do that, because you could give them absolute concrete proof of it, and they would say, no, I disagree, and then they can go on saying nobody has ever answered their challenge. This is why these don't matter. This one, the one with, Kent Hovind. Kent Hovind has another one similar to those.
Is accurate and correct. Thereby making it not atheism, it's faiththeism. It's based on blind faith, folks.
There's a difference between blind faith and faith in the reality that we observe around us, knowing what tends to be the case in reality around us, and then basing our assumptions off of that reality that we already know exists and that we experience every day. We can base what we believe to be true. Oh, I know. Ooh, loaded word, faith word, believe. We can believe that things are true based on evidence. Evidence of, well, it could be this way. We can believe it's this way because this is how things tend to be. You can't do that for God because there's no good reason to believe that your God exists. There's no evidence of your God in the reality that we exist in that you can point to and actually say, this means, if you carry this out, you can get to the point where it makes sense to believe in a God. You can't do that. And every time you make an argument in that way, it can be easily deconstructed, which we've done at some point with almost every single argument you've given here.
Absence of evidence is not...
He repeats himself so much.
Therefore, evidence of absence. The cell phone could actually be there. Now, if I could produce a good argument against the cell phone being there and say I went and I looked in the entire car and ripped it apart and looked and I couldn't find it, okay, that's a good argument. But atheists can't use that
What?
argument. We know less than 1% of the entire universe. So how could...
Okay, but we've also had no good reason to ever believe that in the universe there is any, reason to believe that your God exists within it. Oftentimes, you guys will claim that your God exists outside of the universe, which is kind of how you would have to exist in order to have created the universe. You would have to exist outside of it, which means he does not exist inside of it, which means if the universe is all that exists, which is what we've basically assumed at this point based on what we know, then your God does not exist.
Atheists hypocritically say they've looked everywhere for God's domain, which is spiritual, by the way, and they can't find it.
Yeah, if there was some sort of spirit that lived inside people, that people had a spirit, it would be, if it existed in the universe that we live in, we would be able to detect it in some way. But we can't because it doesn't exist. If it exists, but not in our plane of existence, then it doesn't exist. You can't just make some claim that it exists outside of reality, because then it does not exist inside reality.
The atheists haven't even looked at 1% of just the universe, let alone the spiritual realm. Another thing, too, is atheists will be angry at God, and we're going to go right here. This is where it's telling us to go.
Uh-huh.
And they will say that God should do this, and God should do that. God should operate the world this way, and operate...
Well, yeah, because based on the premises that you give for God, if your God was actually all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good, there would be no evil. In that way, God, if he exists as you claim he does, should, based on his own definition, be doing specific things that he is not doing, which means, based on the way that you have described him, he cannot exist. Very simple.
Another way, and let me go here. And what they'll do is they'll use the atheist standard instead of God's standard. And what they got to realize, my atheist friends, seriously, when you die, God's not going to go by your standard. Scripture says that atheists are fools. He's not going to be a fool. He's going to go by his standard. And in Romans, it says nobody will have an excuse. It says that they will have no excuse because they know that God exists.
Yeah, I know that it says that because otherwise, unless they say something like that, then you have people worrying about, what happens if people have never had anybody tell them about God? That seems kind of unjust, that then they would end up going to hell because nobody ever had the chance to tell them about it. So then they can fall back on, no, they should have known, regardless of whether somebody could tell them. They should have known anyway, because that eases their conscience. Because regardless of what they tend to do in their life that ends up hurting people, they like to pretend that they care about people, ultimately. I have no doubt Richard Dawkins knows God exists. I'm not saying he worships God, but he has knowledge that God exists. Just because they lie, and we know atheists lie, and say that, hold on a second, we're going to go right here, and say that they don't know God exists, they're just suppressing the truth in unrighteousness. Okay, that must be it. I'm just suppressing it. I know he exists. I'd just rather say he doesn't. Because yeah, if I knew that God existed, and I knew that by saying that I did not believe in God, I was going to be tortured for eternity, if I knew that all to be true, then yeah, the logical thing for me to do would be to say, yeah, God doesn't exist. Torture me. Do it, bitch. You won't. Yeah, if I knew for a fact that God existed, that would be the thing I should do. Good point.
Scripture says, gravel. We got to go slow here. So much for going slow.
Motorcycles freak me out. I would never ride a motorcycle. Oh, is he parking?
Okay. So we have another map point here. We're going to pull out of here. Got to be real careful on this gravel.
I'll bet.
Very, very careful.
I don't
want
would
to make any sudden
never want to ride
stops.
a motorcycle.
All right.
Scares the shit
Good
out
old
of me.
asphalt. Number 6 is when they say God is...
Oh God, wait, number 6. He said there were 6 things. Oh no, he still has like 11 minutes. Oh God, what is this last thing that he's going to talk about for 11 minutes?
I was in this debate. It's so hilarious. I was in this debate on the radio, and I was talking to the guy about how God is so loving and righteous, because I was baiting him to...
Well, because I know, in reality, if the God of the Bible that I pretend to, or that I worship, were to actually do all the things that I say that he does, based on the book that I say I believe in, I know that any rational human being would say that none of that is moral, because a lot of it really isn't. So, I was baiting him.
Basically say God was wrong when he killed all the people in the flood. Because the debate topic was, does the Christian God exist? And there's enough evidence to show...
If the question was, does the Christian God exist, then why were you trying to bait him into... Why are you now admitting to trying to bait him into a completely different topic that has nothing to do with whether he exists, and only assuming that he exists whether he was good? Like, this is so dishonest. That's really funny that he's admitting
in Scripture,
to it.
The Christian God is claimed to have destroyed the earth in the flood. Destroyed people in the flood, the earth still remaining, obviously, to be more literal. So I was debating this atheist, and I said, I believe God was righteous and just to destroy his creation in the flood, with the exception of Noah and his family. Because God is the creator of life, he can take life, and he grants life. No,
Okay, so by the same logic, if that's the logic that you're going by, then if you are a parent and you're saying, I brought you into this world, I can take you out, then that is actually true by this man's standards. If you brought them into the world, then if you created them, yeah, you're morally in the right for destroying them. So, hey, I mean, if you're a parent and your kid's being a little shit, according to this guy, you can kind of just get rid of them. It doesn't really matter that much, right? I mean, you brought them in. So morally, yeah, you can probably get rid of them.
You can't go take someone's life. It's called murder. I can't go take someone's life. I'm not the author and creator of life. Anymore, if this motorcycle is just a lemon and I just want to trash it, I have the right to throw the motorcycle out. But other people don't, because they're not the owner of this motorcycle. But anyways,
okay.
The atheist said right here that God is evil. He actually said that God was evil to destroy the earth in the flood. And
yeah, based on the subjective morality that we live by, if somebody, based on the subjective morality, because there is no objective morality, which we've talked about, based just on the subjective morality of the societies in which we live and what we know to be good for the most amount of people, which is what we base our morals on, because again, there is no objective morality, then yeah, even by just our subjective morality there, God was wrong to do that because he ended up killing a bunch of people. So yeah, by our own moral systems, yes, he was evil there, which is all we have to go by.
You really believe that God killed children, women, men in the flood, and that he was evil on both counts? He said, yes, I wouldn't have done that if I was God. And I said, well, ladies and gentlemen, I just won the debate, very humbly speaking, as I bow my head to the ground, because if God destroyed the earth in the flood, and we both agree he did, then he must exist.
Okay, fantastic. So that's why he did that. He was trying to, so it's exactly what I was saying. He was asking a question which assumes the existence of God. Okay, so this is the same problem of, can you say that Voldemort was evil in the Harry Potter books? Oh, you think he was evil? Okay, so apparently Harry Potter is real life now? Fucking moron. That's literally what this is. This is so fucking stupid.
Case closed. I rest my case. All right, we're going to go right here.
Darth Vader was pretty evil. Wow, you believe in Darth Vader? What a fucking moron over here.
I'm going to give you some bonus stupid things that atheists say. When you ask atheists, well, how did everything...
Why did you call it... Oh God, even better. He says, isn't it a coincidence that it ends up being 6 stupid things that atheists believe? And then he gets to 6. And then he keeps going. So he called it 6 specifically just for this reason. Not just because he could only come up with 6, or because he thought 6 was like the right number that he wanted to go with. He has more. He called it 6, and he started by saying that it was 6 so that he could make the comparison to Satan. That's so fucking pathetic. That is really funny.
Get here, they'll say evolution, but that's not what evolution even claims. Evolution talks about things that are already created, and it only talks about how
we love those loaded terms, things that are already created.
Things change over time.
Yeah, because before things started to evolve, there was some sort of chemical evolution, which is kind of a weird, rough term for it. Abiogenesis is kind of more so what it is, where the building blocks of life ended up being created by non-natural processes, things that, or non-biotic processes, still natural processes. They ended up forming into something that could then replicate itself so that it could then begin to evolve in that way. So that's very simple. I mean, it's a very complex thing, but that's what we understand of it. That's how it began to happen.
And when you tell atheists that, they go, well, yeah, I'm not talking about abiogenesis. Well, let's talk about that then. There's nowhere the atheist can hide. Abiogenesis has been proven to be false because...
No, that's not true. We even talked about this in his last thing with this. Abiogenesis has not been proven to be false.
How would I say it? The atmosphere of the Earth, the conditions of the Earth in that pre-stage were as such that, here it is right here, all right, we got some beautiful views for you here, were as such as life could not survive.
Life as it exists now? Probably not. But that's why the life that evolved then was not the life that exists now. And that's why we've changed. Because the atmosphere around us has changed. The conditions in which the organisms were living changed. So the organisms had to adapt and evolve to fit their environment. This is the same thing of like, well, the Earth is so perfectly made for us. So obviously it must have been created intelligently. Like, no. The Earth exists as it does, and it changes over time, but not through any intelligence. And the life that exists on Earth has to adapt and evolve over time to fit the changing environment, because if it doesn't, then it dies out. That's exactly how evolution works.
Scientists have already said that life would not survive in those conditions.
Life as we know it. Life as it exists now would not survive in those conditions, which is why that's not what evolved there.
All right, let's cool this off. Oh, it's getting cool. So folks, I'm gonna go through that bonus reason right there with the evolution. Evolution talks about how things change over time. Evolution doesn't explain how things got here.
Doesn't claim to, nor does it have to.
Neither does abiogenesis. In fact,
abiogenesis doesn't claim how things got here. It claims how the things that were there, that was not a natural or not a biotic process, how they became something that could be considered alive and self-replicating and that sort of thing, so that it could then become biotic things that are organisms.
In fact, atheism lacks explanatory scope. You know what that means? That means atheism doesn't even explain how things got here.
Atheism doesn't have to explain how things got here, because that's not what atheism is. Atheism is not believing in God or believing in the absence of God. That's what atheism is. It does not have to have any explanatory power.
They can't do it
it's not making
because
any
the only
claims.
Rational reason why we have life here is something always had to exist. And whatever that is, I call him God. It didn't...
Wait, what?
We have life here is something always had to exist. Because the only rational reason why we have life here is something...
The only rational reason why we have life here is that something always had to exist. What? That is... What the fuck are you talking about?
Whatever that is, I call him God. It didn't have to be created.
Yeah, no, this goes back to the infinite regression. Like, what are you talking about? If your God had to always exist, because nothing can exist without a creator, then something had to exist before your God to create your God, and then something had to exist before that to create that. All of your arguments, they just fall flat, and you don't realize it. You think that they're so smart, but they're just not.
For example, you ever get dominoes and you put one domino here and here and here, and you hit one and one hits the other? It is a fact of life that everything that comes into existence must have a cause. You, the viewer of this video, your parents gave birth to you, unless you're a test tube baby, then the test tube helped bring you about. But it was basically a human that, you know, the egg was fertilized and out popped you, right? So everything that begins to exist has a cause. What's the important word in there? Everything that's right, begins to exist has a cause. Well, if everything that begins to exist has a cause, and we know the universe began to exist, then that means there has to be something that did not need to be created.
Okay, so now your argument is that your God did not need to be created. It doesn't have to have a cause because it never started to exist, which you have no reason to actually assert, nor do you have any evidence to support that.
Because we cannot have an infinite regress of causes.
You're
ladies
right.
and
We
gentlemen.
can't have an
We
infinite
just can't.
regress.
Logically, it makes sense. There must be something that always existed. If
No, not logically speaking. That is not how that works. Ultimately, everything was condensed back into one tiny, tiny, tiny speck that held all of the mass of the universe, which then expanded. That's how it ended up being. That's how it started. We don't know what happened before that, because before that, time didn't exist.
you can wrap
Because
your mind
time started to exist as a factor of space existing and mass existing and all these things. Time did not exist before the expansion of that matter.
around that. Something that always existed that did not need to be created.
Again, this is making assertions that there's no good reason to be making.
Always existed, it didn't need to be created. And that person is God.
Okay.
It makes sense. Now, whatever created the universe, and this is another reason why I left atheism, the creation of the universe cannot be matter, because all matter, even time and space, energy, came into existence after the so-called Big Bang.
Well, no, not came into existence, but expanded from one point which contained all of it. Trust me, again, I say this every single time that we talk about this, because personally, it blows my mind. Like, astrophysics, fucking crazy. And our minds are not, like, our minds are not, like, evolved to understand these things. Because we evolved on Earth where we needed to survive, and we didn't really care about the universe outside of the world in which we lived. Because we had no evolutionary need to do so. We had no good evolutionary reason for our brain to be able to comprehend concepts like that. Eventually we got to the point where we started to discover concepts like this, and now we can kind of explain them if we do a whole lot of research on them and we actually like fully wrap our mind around it. We can then start to kind of understand it, but even then our mind is not tuned to a way that we can really legitimately grasp concepts that are that big and that expansive. And that's why it seems unintuitive, and it seems like there must be something wrong with it, because in our minds it seems unintuitive, because in a lot of ways it is. It does not mesh with what we witness as reality. The fact that all matter could be condensed into something like that and then expand out. It seems crazy, but that is what we observe, as that is what the science actually points to, is that that was the case. Eventually, maybe we'll have a better understanding of it. I probably won't, because personally, it doesn't really interest me that much, because I don't really care how the universe started. And I don't have a brain for it. I like the evolutionary stuff. I like that quite a bit, but I don't really have the mind for astrophysics and that sort of thing. But your misunderstanding of the way that, like, the Big Bang happened and the way that astrophysics works does not mean that your misunderstanding of it is the truth.
You know, the singularity was not eternal. Even the singularity had a beginning. Well, what do we know that is not material, but is powerful? God. Somewhere I read in Scripture,
What do we know that is this?
the great one, Jesus Christ, said God is spirit, and he must be worshipped as such. God is spirit. It makes sense that something powerful, spiritual, went ahead and created the universe and created us. And I submit to you that atheists are creationists, but they believe the creator is magic dirt.
Magic? I mean, I don't know anything about any magic dirt. I'm not quite sure where you're getting that. Are we going back to the pond scum?
They believe the dirt did it just by luck and chance, no purpose.
No, not the dirt. There were chemicals in the water that existed. I guess the liquid that existed on the surface of the planet long before life actually emerged. There were chemicals that came together and energy that was inserted into it, and eventually, after millions of years of that happening, the conditions were correct to make something that could then replicate itself. That is the simplified version of how it happened. It has nothing to do with magic dirt.
And no design. It's magic dirt, folks. That's what they believe. They believe in magic and luck and chance and randomness.
You see, I think, again, this falls back into the idea that, like, our minds are not wired to comprehend lengths of time that were required for these sorts of things to happen. Like, the idea that something that ended up causing the first thing that could replicate, that could become life. The first the process that would cause that would be so rare that it took millions of years for it to finally happen once so that it could get started. Our minds can't comprehend that. That's not intuitive to us because we live in scales of maybe 100 years. That is the lifetime maybe of a person. So yeah, millions of years is ridiculous to us. That makes no sense in our brains. So it does not surprise me that this is what they keep falling back on, is the idea that it's ridiculous to assert that this sort of thing could have happened. But what they don't realize is the amount of time that had to occur for that random chance to happen. That's the whole point of it. Granted, a lot of them think that the Earth is 4,000 years old, so I'm not that surprised.
Ladies and gentlemen, atheism is madness in its purest form. Another reason why I left atheism for Christianity, wow, this is beautiful. And also because of the beauty of Christianity.
Oh, God, fuck off.
If you remember the word alive, you could witness to people. I'm going to go through a witnessing technique right now. ALIBE, each letter stands for something. A, appearances. It has been proven, and every atheist admits this. All the atheist biblical scholars admit that the disciples admitted that they saw appearances.
Yeah, they said that they saw appearances. That is not proof that he actually appeared. That could have been any number of things.
Of Jesus Christ. They admitted it.
It could have been a lie. It could have been a coordinated effort to make it seem as if this was the case, because that was the sort of thing that he told them, was that he was God, and they believed it, so they had to keep it up. They had to keep other people believing it because they thought that that was what was the most important. It could have been that they believed it so thoroughly that they had some sort of group hallucination about it. There are infinite different possibilities for how this could have happened before you get to the idea that there is actually a supernatural being behind it.
You can say whatever it is, but they admitted they saw appearances of Jesus Christ.
Which proves nothing.
We're not going right here. Look at this beautiful winery. I don't really drink wine. I've had wine before, but I like the beauty of it. Nope, we're not going right here either. Trying to pull over, The low status of women. Male chauvinists were
Is this L, the low status of women?
normal. That was a normal thing back in those days. And the testimony of women was not valued as much.
Oh, God, I've heard this before. This is the whole, well, if they were trying to make it up, then they would have had a man discover it instead of a woman. Okay,
It wasn't even as credible as men.
Okay.
No, I'm not going here.
Your point? Yeah, they weren't seen as credible.
And I'll go through this. So if you were going to make up a story, you wouldn't use women as the first people.
Again, this does not disprove it. They could actually all believe that this was the case. Or maybe, if these people were so smart, maybe they knew that, and so they were future-proofing it. Probably not, but that could be the case, that they were future-proofing it and saying that sort of thing. Maybe the idea that, a woman is saying this and we all believe it, that's the sort of thing that could make people down the line see validity to it. Who knows? I have no idea why, but that's a possibility. Again, there are infinite possibilities for this before you get to having to say, yeah, it was probably something supernatural.
People at the tomb, you would use men, but there's a level, that's another thing L stands for, there's a level of embarrassment.
Level.
Is this a regular road? Okay, good. This is regular. Let's try this. Because the low status of women at that time, I have a Sprite in my bag. I am going to get that Sprite out of my bag. I'm so thirsty. The low status of women at that time, and the fact that there's a level of embarrassment that the disciples were afraid, and so they did not go to the tomb, adds credibility to the story that the reason why all Gospels do not contradict each other, they all claim that the women were the first at the tomb, is because that is a fact that the women were the first at the tomb. And look at this shade right here. And the authors of Scripture were loyal to go ahead and write down what for them was an embarrassing fact.
Okay, well, the women, as I remember, had a job going to the tomb. They were bringing, incense, some sort of oil that they were going to be putting on the body, something like that. And that was the reason they were going. So there's a perfectly valid possibility that they could have believed it so thoroughly that when they got there and they saw that somebody had come by and taken the body, that then they thought, well, this can't be the case, we can't have this, and they could have hallucinated something like that. This is not something that is not something that is like absurd. This is something that happens. People can have group hallucinations about things. If you truly believe something that much as they probably truly believed that this guy was the Son of God, yeah, you can have crazy shit like that happen where multiple people have the same sort of thing, and even if it was just one of them, they could maybe convince the other one that they had seen it. There are so many things, again, before you have to go to the idea that this was something supernatural. But you like to skip all these steps.
Appearances, low status of women, immediate proclamation, I for alive. Hey, look at these grapes right here, pretty beautiful. I gotta take this backpack off. The disciples started proclaiming that Jesus was risen immediately. There is no game of telephone where the story changed over time.
Okay. And?
Immediately, they were proclaiming Jesus had risen. And also...
Yeah, because they probably needed to do that so that people didn't start like saying, oh, well, looks like you were wrong, looks like he wasn't the Son of God. They had to get out there quick and start saying it because otherwise people would just write it off.
That the disciples voluntarily suffered. They didn't have to, but they voluntarily suffered.
Yeah, their suffering, their willingness to suffer is not proof of God.
And then, of course, they suffered for the fact that Jesus Christ had risen.
He is really struggling with that.
And then, of course, folks, the empty tomb. Yes, folks, E is...
No, he did not just forget about
they voluntarily
V.
suffered. And then, of course,
voluntary suffering, is that why?
Immediately, they were proclaiming Jesus had risen. And also that the disciples voluntarily suffered. They didn't have to.
I guess that's his V.
But they voluntarily
suffering.
And then, of course, they suffered for the fact that Jesus Christ had risen. And then, of course, folks, the empty tomb. Yes, folks, E is for the empty tomb.
Which could be explained in any number of ways. Most likely, somebody just came and took the body.
Jesus is alive. I know, and I know that I know that Christianity
I know
is
that
true.
I know that I know.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Okay. That's funny. That is very funny. Yeah, okay. I guess that's what was this? 6 stupid atheist beliefs that are stupid and irrational. All right, yeah, I'm not convinced yet again. Not super convinced by your arguments, but you go right on ahead and you keep making them while you drive around a little bit irresponsibly. And you know we'll keep an eye out, and maybe someday you'll have something worthwhile for us. But yeah, none of your arguments here really convinced me of anything. Good try though.